I appreciate everybody showing up tonight. I think we got a great program for you. We're very excited to have Patrick and Brian with us tonight. If you've had a chance to read their article in the latest edition of Mile Aviation, FPV for Beginners, I think you'll see that these guys put a lot of thought and effort into helping you guys get started in FPV, and we're going to give them an opportunity this evening to go a little bit deeper and maybe answer some of your questions. Before we get deep into the article itself, I wanted to give Patrick and Brian an opportunity to let you guys get to know them a little bit about the program they do as the Roswell Flight Test Crew, the work they're doing on trying to bring FPV into the public setting in terms of using this technology to help public service providers. They've done a lot of good in the Pacific Northwest, and rather than trying to describe it to you, I want to go ahead and introduce Patrick and Brian.
Hey everybody.
Hello.
It's kind of weird. You guys are out there, but we just see ourselves. I'm going to pull up. We've actually got a PowerPoint here, which I'm going to pull up and had a little dropout, so I'm going to assume you guys covered this. But just in brief, we are the Roswell Flight Test Crew. Our moderator, as you know, is Rich Hansen. And tonight we've got Dave Mathewson, the Executive Director of the AMA, working behind the scenes. You'll notice if you're typing questions into the thing, they're not popping immediately. That's because we expect there are probably quite a few. So he's going to kind of regulate that flow through the evening. And the final thing we want to let you know is you guys have carved out an hour of your evening for us, and we really appreciate that. And out of respect for that, we're going to try and finish in a timely fashion tonight. So with that, let's get cranking. Who are we? Well, as Rich alluded to, we're based in Portland, Oregon, and we try and get around the Northwest and everywhere else as much as we can. We're probably best known for our YouTube. We also have a blog and a Facebook page and all the other trappings of modern social media. We're proud members of the AMA and also members of AUVSI, the Association for Unmanned Vehicle Systems International. And we're like, I suspect almost all of you, we're hobbyists. And nobody pays us to go flying. We do this for the love of it.
Pretty much we're hobbyists. I'm Brian. Patrick, of course.
Brian, Patrick. Yes. Lucidity Techenstein, if you watch our videos and needed that point cleared up for you. So what do we do is the next question. Well, we build and fly custom FPV multi-rotors. We teach classes and give public demonstrations, as to what this is all about. We do occasional product reviews on our YouTube channel, and we fly above community events and festivals just sort of for fun. And also we write for industry publications, most noticeably Model Aviation, which you guys obviously know about, and we also submit some articles over to RC Sport Flyer. But what we enjoy most is demonstrating the potential this technology has in the real world in order to help people. So whether that's helping firefighters or other first responders do their jobs safely or better, or in the lower left-hand corner, you see some work we did with West Virginia University helping them try to restore fish habitat, so scientific research. And then finally in the upper left, an industrial application, inspecting wind turbines. So am I going to wring anything out of you yet?
No, not as usual.
I'm going to be doing most of the talking, at least until we get to the technical stuff. So, well, that's enough about us.
Enough about us.
So let's find out a little bit about you and your interest in FPV flying. Now, out there in internet land, I'm going to click on a survey here, and I have no idea how this is going to work. So we'll just give it a shot and hope that it does best. Okay.
Hey.
So
A survey.
Go ahead and click on that survey, whichever answer best fits you, and we will take a look at that and sort of let that guide our conversation from here.
Wow, it's kind of creepy seeing them all submit their answers.
Yeah, we can. On our side, we can see this little pie chart growing. It's just the answers are just flowing in. Looks like we're about a third done. Very cool.
Sorry, we're just admiring the pie chart here.
We're watching you guys do your bit. It's kind of a little like a horse race. I won't tell you which answer's ahead right now, just because I don't want to bias. Which are you gonna? Brian's got a separate screen here. I want to see how he'd vote.
Let's see.
we put Brian down for the last answer. All right, we've got about 75% of you. Looks like I've answered, and it looks like we've got more people joining the webinar as we go. So
We could technically end voting if it falls off. There's no input.
yes, okay. So I'll give it another 5 seconds, guys. Anybody else want to vote? 1, 2,
D,
3,
D,
4, 5. All right, we're cutting it off.
I think the results are pretty.
Yeah, now we're going to share the results with you, and there they are. So as you can see, only a very few people thought this was a seminar about scale flying boat building. And it looks like some people are familiar with the basic concept but haven't really done much with it. And the largest group are studying up on it and thinking about getting into it. And then we've got about an equal number of people, about 12% each, who've got some hands-on experience or are themselves flying FPV regularly. What do you think? Good bunch.
Get those two groups together somehow. They can talk.
Yeah, that's true. Our intention is for this to be a pretty basic going over of the FPV stuff tonight. However, the one thing we're counting on you guys to do is that you know how to fly and know how to build an aircraft. We're sort of taking that as granted. When we wrote our article, somebody wrote in to say, well, yeah, but it didn't tell me how to wire up an airplane. Well, our assumption is you're an AMA member, you already know that. So anyway, I'm now going to try and jump back to my PowerPoint presentation, and we'll move forward. I thought the thing which would be a good place to start is with for us all to share a definition of what is FPV. And just because that type is terribly small and it's getting late in the evening for some of you, I'll go ahead and read it. FPV is a means of piloting a remotely controlled vehicle in which the vehicle transmits real-time video to the operator. By watching this feed by means of video goggles or a portable video monitor, the operator is able to direct the vehicle's movements as though he or she was actually on board the craft, i.e. from a first-person view. This video is often overlaid with telemetry that indicates the vehicle's status, location, and performance by means of an on-screen display. So that's how we're defining FPV. And I think it's important to note that FPV is sort of just one component of a whole suite of skills which are emerging right now. For example, there are a lot of people doing autonomous flying. And
well, yeah, basically the autonomous, I think, kind of isn't FPV necessarily. Doesn't have to be, because the aircraft is taking over and flying itself around based on GPS waypoints. What we do is more direct control. We're in control of the aircraft at all times, with the possible exception of a return to home failsafe.
But yeah, we are official members of the Silk Scarf Club. We like to throw the scarf on and go flying. We don't want a machine doing the flying for us. Now this next slide is a sort of I laid it out for you to be a basic model of FPV flying. And you'll notice it's divided into 4 quadrants, which is to say 2 halves. On the right half of the screen is the ground station, everything that's on the ground. And on the left half of the screen is everything that's in the air, the aircraft. And then the lateral bisection, everything that's in the top is sort of standard RC stuff. All of you guys who fly RC already know that. And then the bottom half of that is what gives us our FPV capability. And Rich, is everything going good out there? I just realized we've been talking for like 5 minutes now, and we haven't heard from another human being. I want to make sure that my dog isn't the only person benefiting from this presentation so far.
Well, I bet on the last.
Go ahead and continue with your presentation, and we'll keep monitoring on this end.
All right. All right. Well, so in the top, I think you guys can see my pen here. In the top right corner, we have our pilot, who by means of his fingers and thumbs gives control to the control transmitter. And then that is transmitted, by 2.4 gigahertz to the control receiver on board the aircraft, in a multi-rotors case, from there to the ESCs, the motors, and all that good stuff. Okay, you guys all know that, I'm sure. Then you can have GPS in that. I put the GPS right on the dividing line because it can play a role both in the flight control system for like return to home functionality and also in terms of your FPV capability by feeding data to your telemetry. So as we proceed into the lower left quadrant here, we have a little box which represents the telemetry, that's sort of consolidating all this data. And you've got a gizmo on there which is taking that telemetry data, which could also include input from real barometric sensors and stuff like that, and putting it into laying it over the top of the video feed so you can see it in your goggles. Then it goes out transmitter and then zaps through the air again to a video receiver on the ground, and then to a goggles or a display which the pilot watches or wears, so that you see that feedback here. And in addition, there's a spotter who's there to keep the pilot aware of things happening in the environment, who's also giving input to the pilot. So as you can see, this is basically a feedback loop. The pilot gives the aircraft controls, the aircraft responds to the controls, that changes what the camera and the FPV gear is seeing, which comes back, the pilot sees what the aircraft sees the change they made by their input, and the pilot makes another input. So basically, it's just going around like this. Conventional RC flying sort of cuts out the lower half. So the pilot gives it input, goes to the aircraft, they observe the aircraft directly, and so there's your cycle. So anyway, a lot more technology in this cycle, which of course means more places for things to go wrong, which is one reason why you need the spotter there, so that you're ready to handle those situations, which the technology may not best allow you to deal with.
Or the spotter has to become the pilot all of a sudden.
Yes, yes. Or the camera only looks one direction, so it keeps the pilot aware of things in other, that's happening out of his or her view. Okay, in the spirit of telling them what you're going to tell them and then tell them, I've just written out here the 8 steps which you will have to go through to fly FPV in a safe and legal manner. This follows along identically with our article in Model Aviation. Thank you. And so these are those steps in detail. Here's where I'm hoping, if you guys aren't asking questions, you will start, because
I see questions up there. I just don't see anything.
No, nothing's come through yet. Well, let's just maybe it's all trolls.
Just save it for the end.
Okay, so step 1, ham it up.
Hey, Patrick?
In order, and by the way, this is the part where he's going to start talking. Yo!
Yeah, I was just talking to Dave here, and he said
we heard you, Rich.
We do have a few questions coming in regarding this first few segments. So why don't we see what Dave has in terms of questions that you guys might be able to answer for us.
All right. Patrick and Brian. Got a question here from Brian. He says, does FPV flying mean the camera is in a fixed position always, or does the camera always move, or can it be either?
Aircraft and how you like to fly. For example, the aircrafts that we fly, the camera is in a fixed position, or maybe it'll have a gimbal to turn it up and down, but we normally don't have it on a complete gimbal to pan around, because what tends to happen is you want to be able to fly the aircraft in the direction of your choice. Now
we fly multi-rotors, just to make that clear.
Now for a fixed
so if we want to look to the left, we just pivot the aircraft to the left.
Yeah, and the fixed wings tends to have the camera able to move around. You can use a head tracker that goes on your goggles, so if you move your head around, it will track with your head position, which makes it easier to kind of gain situational awareness and such.
So either is the answer. You can do it both ways.
Yeah, but we primarily fly with the camera fixed forward, though. The machine...
But not such a good option if you're fixed wing. If you have to turn to see the tree, well, things are going downhill quickly. All right, Dave, any other questions, or shall we...
Let's ask one more here. And I know you guys have got a little bit of experience in this area, but question from Jeff. He says, I'm retired from emergency management. Have you had any contact with FEMA to discuss the potential for applications in disaster assessment and recovery?
The answer to that question is no. We've not even had any contact with FEMA. We have, however, worked with a number of local, first responders, several fire departments, mainly seems to be fire departments that we work with, to do that, but never actually at the federal level. But it got out in the news that whoever the incident commander on the ground was with FEMA was saying, if anybody flies a drone, we'll arrest them. So it was like...
Yeah, people were trying to help. They were filming for just the sake of filming, but they were all grounded, essentially.
Yeah, so that may have just been one guy, and who knows what his or her personal attitude was, but that we were less enthused about FEMA after that than we were before that.
Well, hopefully in the future, if we can get a hold of them ahead of a disaster, we'll be prepared to be plugged into their detail, perhaps, as far as getting aerial photography and video of situations. But
yeah, because obviously it has great potential to help with that. It looks like Rich is trying to come through. Hello, Rich.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in here. The one thing that we've had contact here at AMA headquarters is we were contacted by the local Delaware County Emergency Management System and their interest in using UAS technology in disaster assessment relief. And then we were also contacted by a county down in Florida with the same type questions, and actually there was an interesting idea there. They were talking about actually setting up teams throughout the country on a state level basis that could be on an emergency response similar to what REACT does in the amateur radio community. Mm-hmm. That would actually be trained and ready to respond in the event of emergency. So I think that there certainly is a technology that's going to be instrumental and be a large portion of emergency management situations when we have natural and unfortunately sometimes man-made disasters.
Well, that's great. When we first started doing this a couple of years ago, I sort of imagined what I at the time called the Civilian Reconnaissance Drone Corps, which is basically just that exact same idea. Get together, proven operators doing FPV and have them plugged into some sort of work, exactly like you say, like the hams are.
Basically, we wanted to be able to use more frequencies, specifically the 70-centimeter band, 433 megahertz, and basically more power to control our aircraft, which requires a ham license in the States here. So if you're going to be using the 433 band, or you want to use more than like 25 milliwatts of power, people that are flying without license just don't recommend it because, well, if you get caught, I'm not quite sure what the fine is, but
it's going to be
not cool.
Thousands of dollars.
Considering a ham license is what, like $35, $40 or so?
I don't think it's even that much.
It's cheap, and the training is basically free. You just got to find someone in your community that's offering a test radio outlet. They will tell you where these people are and how to get a hold of them.
I basically, in order to do everything you'll ever want to do as an FPV pilot, you need to get a technician's license, which is the lowest level license. So we're not asking you to climb Everest here.
And no Morse code.
Yeah, no Morse code. No Morse code, which is good. I would not now be a ham if there was a requirement. And basically, there are three ways about getting this. You can read a book, study up on that. You can study online. There are good courses which are available online, which have the virtue of being interactive. And then finally, you can do what we did, which is take a local class. It was a 2-day class. It was free, and I think it was like $20 to take the test.
Wasn't something like it was really cheap. And the thing is, though, is they did a wonderful job at teaching. Essentially, they were teaching to the test, but they were giving you good information also. It was nice to interact, ask questions, because if you're reading a study guide or a book, you can't go, well, how is this relevant? You can ask a person that, and they can answer.
And just for the record, and you'll find this out as we move deeper into the presentation here, I am not technically sound. I'm a words guy, not a solder guy. And so the fact that I was able to pass the test on the first try, if I can do it, I promise you can do it. So anyway, no excuses. Get out there and get your ham license. And by the way, most online retailers will sell you the gear, but there's a warning there. It says you have to have a ham license to operate this in the United States. So just be cautious of that. Just because you can buy it doesn't mean you can legally use it. Oh my gosh, Rich has reached in and taken control of our webinar here. Rich, I'm gonna stand aside and let you.
I just wanted to chime in on the ham frequency issue because we've been getting a lot of questions about that here since the article came out in the issue of Mile Aviation, and there's a lot of misunderstanding regarding what they call the ISM bands. These are the unlicensed bands that were set aside for industrial, scientific, and medical use, and that's basically the 900 megahertz, the 2.4 gig, 8 gig. And it is true that these are unlicensed bands, but they're unlicensed band when they're used in relatively low power settings, and you have to be using a technology that has a high tolerance to interference. And what we're talking about is basically either spread spectrum or what they call dynamic frequency selection. or what other people think of as frequency hopping. So, and the reason for this is that's what allows frequency to operate without interference, is because of this frequency selection and frequency hopping. The typical video downlink that's using either 5.8 or 2.4 is not using that technology. It's a direct, solid frequency, because you have to have...
You were talking about how video requires a strong, steady signal as opposed to frequency hopping.
The best thing to do is go ahead and get that backlight. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to you guys and let you go from there.
For that. You obviously don't need a ham license to use a hobby radio. However, when you're going to take a slice of that spectrum and broadcast down it non-stop, like you need for video, well, that's what pushes you over into another category. And I've like the folks at the AMA, I've been doing some research on this myself since the article went live, because we've been getting a lot of questions too. And the part of the thing I came to was, if you go around your house and if you got a wireless phone, not a cell phone, but a wireless phone, or like a remote control, a UHF remote control for your TV or whatever, you flip that over, there's going to be a little sticker on it that says Part 15 compliant, which allows you to broadcast in those bands without a ham license. Now, when you order a video transmitter receiver pair from online and you flip it over, you're going to notice no Part 15 compliant sticker. So just remember, sticker, you can use it without a license. No sticker, which is everything you're ever going to use, license. So having, I think, probably clubbed that question to death, we will move on to the choice of aircraft. And there are two basic types of aircraft available for FPV.
Well, they're helicopters, but, you know, just ignore those.
Well, you know what? Actually, that sounds like a great segue into our second poll. So I'm going to try and pull up now. There we go. What type of aircraft are you most interested in flying, FPV? Oh, and the answers are coming fast and furious now. Apparently we've got some Levitron pilots out there.
Oh, that must be.
No, more than one.
Oh, really?
2% of our population here knows what a Class 6 Levitron even is.
Yeah, we actually have some helicopter pilots out there, FPV.
Yeah. All right. Looks like the pace of voting is slowing out there in internet land. Once again, we're up to about 75%, so we'll give it another 5 seconds, and then we'll shut down the voting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. End voting. This system is working surprisingly well so far. Now we'll share the results with you. Ta-da! All right, so multi-rotors in the lead. Woo! Go multi-rotors.
Not surprising, the ease of use and how fun it is to fly around and float around, you know, parks and trees and dive under things and, well,
Safely.
Safely. Prudently. Yeah.
Yeah, that actually pretty much matches up with my expectations. Wow, it's 60% for multi-rotors. That's really impressive. Fixed wings, obviously, a big choice there. That's, I think, pretty much where FPV got going at first, was fixed wings.
First time I ever heard of it was in the 90s, I guess, and it was a fixed wing. But wow.
And then helicopters, a small slice. The problem is those airframes tend to transfer a lot more vibration to the camera, so you've got to work a lot harder to get that out of the system. And then the Class 6 Levitrons, we probably should just, nothing more to say about that here in public. So now we'll jump back to this. Any comments on the different platforms?
Well, I think you have to determine what you want to do. Do you want to soar a little bit higher, longer distances, constantly moving forward like an airplane would do, or do you want to take a multi-rotor and hover around and inspect things, or you can go forward quite fast if you want to, but typically your flight times are a bit shorter on the multi-rotors, especially for ground covered. And then, of course, I guess the multi-rotors are pretty good in the wind. I don't know how the fixed wings, unfortunately, don't have enough experience with the wind to know with that. Yeah,
multi-rotor, here at the Roswell Flight Test Crew, multi-rotors are kind of our thing. That's what we do. So we're not a great source, frankly, for information about fixed-wing platforms.
Yeah, I've flown fixed-wing in pretty high wind, but not FPV though, so it's bouncing around like crazy. Probably wouldn't make for a great experience.
Yeah, yeah. And after all, we're doing this for fun, so you want to have a good experience. Next up, we're going to, and this is where I'm going to go get a sandwich, and Brian will cover these next couple of slides for you. This one is looking at what frequency you want to choose to transmit your video on. So, like I said, I'll go get some food. I'll be back in a little bit.
Hey. So basically, what we're talking about here is our antennas. We typically use circular polarized. There's a picture right there, actually. What that does is it helps with multipath rejection. So you get reflections off of objects, it reverses polarity, and the antenna won't pick it up. So very clean, very clear video, but the antennas get quite large at low frequencies because the wire, if you know about antennas, the wire has to be longer to make the antenna a lower frequency. The 5/8 work very, very well for short to medium distances, very small, easy to work with, but they're very hard to make, so they're difficult to get a really good one. 2.4 is a good area to be, but if your radio's on 2.4, you don't want to do that because we're jamming your radio with this video signal.
Frequency hopping or no?
Yes. So 1280, that's a good frequency to be on, but it can interfere with 2.4. It's close to a first harmonic, which basically means that you're going to be transmitting 2.4 with your radio, and then cut that in half. You'll be transmitting that back with your video. It could jam the radio, but I would say we fly 2.4 control and 5/8 video on most of our aircraft. One frequency that's not listed there, actually, that's just for video only, I guess, is...
Yeah, it's only video.
Only video. So 900 megahertz, we have experienced that. It works fairly well, but your antenna is enormous, and it's comically oversized, very delicate, very easy to get bent.
As you can see in the photograph there, and the little disc in the middle of that is a quarter for scale.
Yeah.
So the 5/8 antenna, which is a little itty-bitty guy, is kind of robust simply as a virtue of its size. It's easy to protect.
Yeah, the one next to it's a 1.2 gigahertz antenna, so 900 is even bigger than that.
Oh, really? That's a 1.2?
That's a 1.2. Yeah.
So this is why I showed the tech guy writing the captions.
Antenna.
And then with those little green to red triangles, what I was trying to just show you there is kind of the trade-offs you make. Is that the 900 megahertz antenna, the antenna is really big, but as you move up the spectrum, the wavelengths get shorter and the antenna gets smaller. But on the other hand, with the 900 megahertz antenna, you get better signal penetration, like through trees or sort of light cover.
Yeah, objects or whatever. If you fly behind a house or a tree or an object with a 5/8, it's a good chance you're going to lose a lot of your signal, if not all of your signal. A lot of those hot dogs you see flying around through their houses and whatnot, they can barely see their signal half the time. But they're still flying those, and they're pretty confident doing it because they've been doing it for a while. But at the with larger antenna, lower frequencies, they penetrate a bit better. But again, the trade-offs are this giant antenna. That's pretty much how we see it, I guess.
All right, so we beat that one to death. Here's another Brian special. So now we're talking about how you choose a transmitter. Oh, hello. How you choose a transmitter-receiver combination and different kinds of antennas. So wind him up and turn him loose.
This is a linear polarized antenna. Basically, it's just an antenna which broadcasts in a linear fashion, and
it's straight. The antenna.
Straight, yes. So that's what you find on most of your FPV systems. These little whip antennas. The problem with that is they're susceptible to reflections and interference. So if something if you tilt your aircraft, the antenna tilts, therefore your polarity changes, which could also be a problem if you're flying an aircraft that banks. All of a sudden you've lost your signal until you upright yourself because the polarity changes. So the circular polarized don't have that same problem. First of all, when signals bounce, unlike linear, they bounce back in a reverse polarity fashion, so your antenna won't receive them properly, as opposed to...
So they won't be interference for the signal you want.
Anyone who's flown with FPV with a linear polarized antenna and has got reflections off of buildings or trees or things, you see kind of double images in their video, and that just doesn't happen as often with circular polar. And it has very good omnidirectional characteristics. So if you tilt and turn your aircraft around, you'll still get good video from it. If you're flying FPV, With a few minor exceptions of really long-range stuff or really high-end antennas, go circular polarized. You won't regret it.
Now, what about at the top of the slide where it says transmitter wattage versus effective radiated power? That means I should buy the most powerful transmitter I can, right?
Yes. Well, one of the things about antennas is there also a gain number associated with antennas. Let's say antennas are so many dB gain. So if you are transmitting at, let's say, 100 milliwatts, and you put...
It's not enough.
Let's say you are, because I'm bad at math, 100 milliwatts, and you increase your gain by 3 dB, you're effectively transmitting at 200 milliwatts. Now, what the antenna does is it shapes the waveform. Basically, what it is the antenna broadcasts in an omnidirectional pattern, and if you increase the gain, you're squishing that omnidirectional pattern a bit, making it a little bit wider so you get more distance. Same thing works in the receiver antennas. You'll see these little corkscrews, circularly polarized antennas. They're highly directional. They only receive a very narrow beam.
Kind of a cone.
Kind of a cone. But very high gain, and it's the equivalent of upping your transmit power. So a good antenna will go a long way, and it's actually more effective to get a better antenna than a better transmitter.
Just get a better both, and then you got your bases covered.
Yeah, both also works. But versus having a giant, heavy transmitter that requires continuous cooling with a small fan, just get a better antenna. Transmit antenna typically is a low gain antenna because you want a better omnidirectional pattern. The receiver antenna can be highly directional and pointed at the aircraft or in the direction of the aircraft, and you'll get a pretty good signal with that.
Just make sure you don't go outside that cone or...
No, yeah. If you travel behind your antenna and your antenna is focused, its power, you're basically receiving forward, and you go behind it, you will lose a lot of your strength right there and possibly your video. So be aware of that, or get something with diversity where you've got two antennas that can pick up from different directions.
All right. Well, I think I will just briefly ask Rich and Dave if anybody out there in Internet land has some questions they'd like us to answer. Looks like they're continuing to stack up. Just for those of you out in Internet land watching, I have to tell you that we've given any number of public talks, and it's kind of eerie knowing that you're all out there but not sort of hearing from you or being able to see your faces. My dog is looking at us somewhat confused, but that's all we've got for feedback. Oh, here they come.
So let me ask a question here. If you need an antenna on your flight controller as well as on the video transmitter, can they both be circular polarized, or would it be better to have one circular and one linear?
I personally have not seen or run into a controller which was not linear polarized. I've never seen a circular polarized antenna on a controller, although it would work. Typically reserved for the video. Not quite sure what that is exactly, probably because it required modification of both radios.
Have a directional quality, which could, if that was your control frequency and you got outside your cone,
yeah,
badness could ensue.
People do use high gain Yagis for their control, so they definitely do that, but they're linear. So that's a good question. I've never come across anyone using a circular polarized for their control on any frequency, but...
Well, the next question, step 5 in your path to flying FPV, is to take a look at what sort of camera you want to use.
Well, here are two examples. One is an inexpensive board camera from an online very well. It's low resolution. You can change the lenses. It's very light, very small, but has no ability to record on the aircraft. You'd have to use some kind of external recorder for it. It takes $30, $40 or so. On the right-hand side, of course, is a GoPro. We like the GoPros because they record high-definition video on the camera, and we use a video out cable to go to our video transmitter. So we can not only see what the camera sees in the GoPro through the GoPro, it's recording everything in high definition, even though we're basically flying in low definition. So it's a great camera kind of all around. Now, most of our aircraft, we have two cameras on. We have one of each. We fly with a board camera or a small camera, and then a GoPro records the video, and we can just choose to switch back and forth between the two in our downstream. So if the GoPro happens to conk out or battery dies or something, we still have control and video in the aircraft. Anything else?
I was going to say another potential challenge with sports cameras like the GoPro is that it has its own internal battery. So if that battery discharges to zero while you're in the air, you lose that video feed. Whereas the board camera is powered off your battery. So as long as your machine's still in the air, your board camera's still got power. So that's another reason why our aircraft have both, is so that we've generally always got one camera that works. Even if the GoPro conks out on us, we just flip a switch.
Yeah, videos are inexpensive from either Hobby King or Boxtec FPV. They're small little things. They don't weigh hardly anything. They plug into a receiver channel, and you can just flip back and forth between two or three cameras. Very convenient.
Cheap insurance if something goes wrong.
Cheap insurance. That if you don't need to be your return to home, and in effect, you feel much better off doing that.
Absolutely. So what you see on your screen now is kind of an example of an OSD. This is an Eagle Tree, which is the one we've mostly used so far. And as you can see, it's in addition to providing a lot of useful information, it's pretty cool. You feel a little like Tom Cruise in Top Gun. You've got ladders for your airspeed and altitude. You've got a compass. And you can just load this thing up with even additional sensors, the Eagle Tree, temperature sensors, all kinds of cool stuff. So it's a lot of fun.
Well, personally, I think that as far as OSDs are concerned, there are two bits of information which you'll find very, very useful, especially in certain situations. First is the battery condition.
Go ahead.
The first thing about the battery is that you can check with the OSD basically what your battery condition is. If you're flying for a while, you can see if you're going to underload, if it's going to drop below a safe level, so you can get it back before it discharges too much, because it's very easy to lose yourself running around FPV. And of course, not all batteries are the same, so relying on a timer is good, but having a readout is even better. Secondly is a GPS home location. If you're flying out, a ways, especially over ground that looks very similar, like trees or bushes or something like that, where there's no objects around, you can't tell where home is. And sometimes judging that by the sound of the aircraft doesn't work if it's, a half a mile away or something.
Although
like that.
your spotter should be there to maintain your orientation and bring you home.
It's much easier just to be able to zero in on the OSD and go, oh, home is in this direction. So you're not trying to rely on the spotter to take over or tell you where home is. Oh, it's this way, it's that way. Because, yes, they could probably fly it back, but, it's a better experience not to have to panic for a second to figure out where you are.
It looks a lot slicker if you bring your own machine home rather than relying on the spotter or the autopilot to do it. You come across considerably more polished. So anyway, the Eagle Tree is a complicated and somewhat expensive, like $250.
Yeah, it's a nice system though, and it's modular. So
it's a nice system and it's modular. No, we love it. But the point was, you can get like for $10 on Hobby King, you can get an OSD that just gives you your battery voltage, and that's like the single most important piece of information.
Your spotter can't tell you battery voltage.
Yes.
So if your battery just isn't or wasn't charged as much as you thought it did, you can check real quick and see that your voltage is dropping below where it should, and get the plane home before either A, you run out of battery, or B, you ruin the battery trying.
Or both.
Or both.
All right, next up, goggles versus a video display.
Well, this is more of a personal preference. We like the goggles because it's a very immersive experience. You block out the external world. You're only seeing through the aircraft's camera, and there's a bit of if you just took the goggles on and off your head, it's very difficult to adjust from the dark environment of the goggles to the light environment outside. So some people don't like that, and for those that don't, the video display works really well. We also use video displays if trying to frame a shot. So if I'm flying it eyes on the aircraft, and then I want to just get the camera aiming at the right thing, I use the small display on top of the radio to frame shots essentially.
Particularly when you're getting started in FPV, the goggles can be kind of an advantage because they eliminate outside distractions. So not only do you not see your spotter freaking out because he's also a novice and things are getting exciting, but furthermore, you aren't tempted to be watching your display and then look up at the aircraft, because the aircraft's flying at home and the display shows it essentially heading away from you, looking out the front of the aircraft. The moment you lift your head, your aircraft is turned 180 degrees.
Yeah.
And so when you're wearing the goggles, you really don't have that option to look around and try and spot your aircraft.
I think what it comes down to is your controls are instantly reversed. So until you get used to that sensation of knowing that certain input gives your aircraft a certain direction to go a certain way, and looking away from the screen, they're instantly backwards, and it's a weird sensation at first. You kind of got to get used to it. Some people don't like the goggles. They find them disorienting, or they don't like them just crowding their face. But that's just a personal preference again. So
there's some people I think get motion sickness wearing the goggles, and another thing to think about is we've sort of moved past this, I think, just by virtue of experience. But a lot of people sit down when they're flying with the goggles. I think because
well, you tend to kind of move with the aircraft.
Yeah. So we've got that tamed to the point where we can fly standing up. But
you haven't flown over in a while, have you?
Yeah, not for weeks, I'd say. So anyway, and then the 8th and final step is to find a friend.
So you grab
and the friend plays the very important role of being your spotter. Now, I want to say a couple things about the whole spotter thing. One, there are certainly elements within the FPV community that say, I don't need no darn spotter. And I mean, I can understand where you're coming from. I mean, it's not always convenient to have somebody with you. It just isn't kind of your thing. But it's sort of two things. One, this stuff's a lot more fun when you do it with somebody else. I really have to say. And then secondly, Brian and I, for example, we trade off flying. We don't. One of us will fly once, and then I'll put on the goggles, and he'll spot me, and then vice versa. And so, I mean, obviously, it's good for both of us to maintain pilot proficiency, but it's more of a social experience.
Well, and also with a spotter, it's nice to know that if you're target fixated on something you're looking at, you're flying around and just going, wow, this is a great statue or whatever, and someone yells tree, you're like, oh, what, where? So it's so easy to just be target fixated. You're looking forward, especially the multi-rotor. The fixed wing not so much, but multi-rotor definitely, because you can move in any direction. You can be wandering backwards and not realize it because you're looking at something, or right or left, or the wind's carrying you. Because in multi-rotor, in FPV, the wind, you just float with the wind nice and smoothly. And if there's something, anything, power lines, trees, whatever, someone can tell you ahead of time, hopefully.
Before you hit it.
Before you hit it.
And that person is your spotter. The other thing I was going to say about spotter is, as unpopular as the AMA is in some quarters for making a spotter a required part of the FPV program under Document 550, they're not doing that to be difficult. The truth is that that the spotter requirement comes straight from the FAA, and none of us are going to be overruling them anytime soon. Now, we just, last week, were part of a conversation with the good folks at the AMA, and they were talking about, under what circumstances acts the spotter requirement. Indeed, there already are some. If you're flying a very lightweight aircraft inside,
indoors,
you don't need line of sight, and you don't need to be a spotter, or to have a spotter. And you can even fly a larger aircraft indoors without a spotter, provided it's sort of in a controlled access place. The idea is if we've got Raven, our big hexacopter, we're flying it indoors, yay, no spotter, but we don't want some poor person to open a door and get a face full of props. So, and then we're looking at outdoors. How could we maybe modify the code? We were even talking about maybe like classes of airspace, like the manned aircraft have. Well, this is, million miles from anything, maybe could we relax the spotters signature?
There's still some talk about that, though. For now, it's prudent to have a spotter.
It's not only prudent, the rules say you have to.
The rules say you have to have a spotter.
And it's prudent.
You just find someone to watch the aircraft for you. It's still fun.
Absolutely. Moving on, this is kind of where we call upon you to be good aerial citizens. FPV, and I get the feeling this applies to a lot of you who are going to be taking this next step, judging from that first poll, that you guys are mostly interested, but you don't have a lot of experience. You guys are going to step into this brand new world, and it is really, really cool. You are going to enjoy it, I promise that. And in addition to that, I think it has this capability that we can make a difference in our communities, that we can help and really give back in a direct way by providing, intelligence to firefighters or whatever. But the thing which has to go along with that is safety first. You can never, ever neglect safety. because all it's going to take is, you know, one reckless individual, and the boom is going to come down. Got to figure out which arm is on the screen here. The boom is going to come down on all of us. So always think safety first. Always think, am I doing this the safest way possible?
Well, just don't be that guy.
Don't be that guy
on YouTube that was flying around New York City in the in bumping into buildings.
Yes.
You know,
that's not good.
Yeah.
And to sort of inspire you to that possibility of becoming involved and making a difference in your community, we've got not one but two prizes which are open right now for you to get involved in. The first one is the Drone Social Innovation Award, which is being organized by the Drone User Group Network. Their goal is for you to find some way to use your homemade drone to make a difference in your community. And I always fall back on this one, but like, go to your local parks department and use an aerial perspective to help them track the movement of invasive species.
Ask them first.
Ask them, right. No, don't just go out and do it. Go ask what an invasive species looks like. Work with them. But the point is to do some sort of a project, and that's probably about the least creative, but still worthwhile when I could come up with. Go out and do some sort of a project that will allow you to help your community, and then you submit that in a YouTube video and a brief write-up. As long as you do that by June 20th, 2014, you'll be eligible to win a $10,000 prize, courtesy Nexa Capital Partners. So anyway, I mean, that's a very cool opportunity. Brian and I are judges for that contest. You can send your bribes to, or like the car guys say, write your name on the back of a Lamborghini, and
send it to.
Send it to, right. So anyway, and then very similar but a different prize with some cool possibilities is the 2014 Drone Prize, which is being organized by the Cascade chapter, our chapter, UVSI. And this one's kind of a two-step process. The finalists there'll be three teams of finalists, pilot and spotter, selected to come here to beautiful Portland, Oregon, where it's rainy today. You're going to hang out with us and some other cool people, and we're going to do training exercises like you see us do.
Like our videos, yeah.
Yeah, in our videos, you know, helping first responders, you know, assessing damage, that sort of thing. So your initial entry to that, which again is a short video and a short write-up, is due July 27th, 2014, and then the weekend in Portland will be August 22nd through 24th, and the grand prize is a gorgeous $10,000 aerial platform, courtesy our friends over at Aerial Technology International, which is also a local company. So in any event, and the website there is droneprize.com, so check that out. And then finally, here comes our gratuitous commercial promotion. We have teamed up with FlySafe, located in beautiful Minneapolis, Minnesota, to help teach a class in FPV flying and professional unmanned aerial photography. It's going to be May 2 to 4th. Go to their website, www.flysaferaining.org, and use the giant red coupon code Roswell14, and you will save $100 off your registration. So do that, and we will see you in Minneapolis. So with that, this seems like a safe slide to leave off on questions.
All righty. And we're just about done here, so let me get this one last question. And it is, what is the best way your local fire department or public safety agency and offer FPV support?
That's a great question, one we've been asked before, and unfortunately it's kind of a difficult one. I would encourage everyone who wants to do that to persevere and stick with it, because it's not going to be a quicker and easy process. Here's the problem. Your average fire department, you know, they've been putting out fires for 200 years. They know how to do that. They've got it handled. They've got it dialed in. And so think about it from their perspective. You're the fire chief. You're sitting there. You're doing what your predecessors have done for 100 years. Everything's going groovy. And the slightly peculiar-looking guy shows up. Here are two prime examples. And says, I want to fly my homemade drone. Over, the guy's going to sort of scratch his chin and go, let me get back to you on that. And by back to you on that, he means never. So the problem is there's going to be a very deep skepticism, because you're coming from the outside. If you're a PDT guy like us, you're going to encounter a lot of resistance and skepticism, just because you're suggesting something that's never been done before. So the key thing is going to be perseverance. Is just keep going back. Don't be polite. Don't take no for an answer. And then the second thing is, if you can find any kind of personal connection to somebody at the fire department, because the problem is going to be what you're suggesting is going to sound so outlandish to them. It's like not going to fit in any box they know how to deal with, so they're just going to shrug their shoulders and move on with their day. So what you should try and do is make some personal connection. Find somebody who maybe flies at one of your local fields. Find somebody in that fire department who can sort of be your champion, even though they're just a line firefighter. It doesn't have to be the chief or anybody. And go to that person and say, hey, check out this technology. I really think it could help you guys. And we, by the way, encourage, please, use our videos for examples, because we've done lots of, wildland fire, structural fire, all that sort of stuff. So show them our videos, take loose on their service, and hey, Phil, check this out. You guys think you could use a capability like this? And then, but the key thing, the two key things I would say is just persistence, because they're going to be very skeptical and confused when you first approach them. And secondly, if at all possible, find that internal champion to sort of vouch for you and to sort of build the interest up from the inside, because if you have to do it all by yourself from the outside, it's going to be a very, very long undertaking.
Yeah, so you've tried.
Yeah, I mean, even we who've done it before, we've flown with two of the three. There are three big agencies which serve the greater Portland area, and we've flown with two of them very successfully. We never had a problem. The two we've flown with really like us, so no problem. The third one, I called them, sent copies of our videos, and I'd get back an email that says, it's very interesting, thank you, and then never hear anything. And it shows me that I gave up like a year ago, because I was getting nowhere. Hey, we had two people who were willing to have us fly with them. And then out of the blue, like 2 weeks, and it's like, where was this guy a year ago when I was trying to make inroads with these guys?
All righty. Well, listen, hopefully you hear me okay, Pat. We want to thank you guys for being with us tonight. You did a fantastic presentation. Apologize to all of the listeners.
It's our
technical difficulties. We're going to try and do a lot more of these webinars. Patrick and Brian would love to have you back and go into more detail, such as this last question, how to get involved with the public safety agency, and maybe get into more of the technical areas of assembling an FPV system. But I think this was a very wealth of information for the people that were able to join us tonight, and we look forward to doing it again. Thanks again, and have a great evening.
Absolutely. Have us back anytime. We are at your disposal. And everybody out there in internet land, wrong hand again, thank you. Thanks for taking part of your evening with us. We're honored that you chose to spend some time with us, and we have great faith in you. We're excited time we go online and see what everybody else is doing.
All right. Good night, guys.